Today's webinar is titled Beyond Location, Engaging Mobile Audiences with Smarter Targeting, and will be brought to you by our guest presenters Keith and Andrew from JiWire. With that, let's get started. Over to you, Keith.
Hey, thanks a bunch, Joe. I appreciate it. And thanks, LSA community, for allowing us to spend about a half hour to 40 minutes with you, going through mobile and reaching audiences in mobile with targeting. Like I said, we're going to spend the next 25 or 30 minutes talking about the following. Again, just a quick brief overview of JiWire, talk a little bit about how we create and use mobile audiences, how we engage with those audiences, and we'll make sure to talk, at the national level as well as the hyper-local franchise level, since we're here at the LSA. And we're actually going to talk a little bit about measuring that audience behavior, both digitally and offline, and then we'll actually share some audience intelligence with you. We just released our Insights research report this morning about the QSR category, so we'll show you some of the research that we're doing and how we use that research to drive media planning and actually drive learning and media strategy for the industry and our clients as a whole. Then, of course, we'll work with Joe at the end and just do some Q&A and answer your questions. So just a little bit about JiWire. We've been basically innovating in the industry for the last 10 years. We've built probably one of the first location-powered advertising and audience intelligence platforms. We've been doing mobile privacy with the privacy organizations since day one with the partnership with Trustee. And again, privacy is extremely important in mobile. And we've actually built one of the first offline mobile ROI measurement solutions that's really measuring the in-store lift very precisely. And again, we've got a lot of scale. We've been doing this for a while in the Wi-Fi and mobile channels. We've got almost 850 million devices profiled. We're adding a lot of new data points every month, and we've got a lot of accuracy. And again, you can see just some of the awards and acknowledgments that the team here has received in the work we've been doing in the mobile industry and helping our national and local clients reach their audience. So before I get into talking about creating audiences and engaging and measuring, I do want to frame the discussion, and I like to frame this as we're talking in digital media, basically with the media and the consumer value chain. And again, when you're running digital media, as we all know, and when you're running advertising, I guess we start with media planning and qualifying our audiences. We then actually reach and target those audiences at home or when they're about town, and then we also target them and actually engage with them when they're near or in the store. And then we actually look at that visit, behavior and actually drive that learning back into the media strategy on the front end. So I'm going to really frame this discussion along those lines of audience creation, audience engagement, and then audience measurement and insight in the mobile space and how we do it, and some considerations you should have as you're looking at advertising and evaluating either us or some of the other vendors in the space. So let's get into it, looking at creating mobile audiences. So again, in the mobile world, location really is the real-world cookie. We've all worked in online, we've all run media and online, and we're used to having a cookie, an Internet Explorer, a Chrome, or a Firefox cookie that allows us to target. And that's been, we've been able to do that because those cookies are very persistent. And online, cookies last upwards of 6 months. It's something we can reuse in an anonymous fashion to create and target an audience. But in mobile, those same types of cookies don't exist. If you look at a cookie in mobile web or you look at a cookie in-app, the average expiration time is less than 7 days. So as you can imagine, it's very hard to build an audience and target and manage an audience against those traditional cookies that we're used to in online. So what we do in mobile is we actually look at the device and we look at the anonymous device ID and we actually look at where people go. So we look when they go to the grocery store, we look when they go to a retail, we actually look when they're at the office, and we look basically when they're at home. So again, as you move into the mobile space and with the way the mobile ecosystem works and the new smartphone and tablet platforms have been architected, with Apple and Android devices and soon to come Windows devices. We basically have to look at location as basically the real-world cookie versus the cookies we're used to on online. So how does this work? So let's take through a very simple example here, this representative example. What you're looking at here is the San Francisco Bay Area, so San Francisco here, Golden Gate Bridge, again, East Bay, Berkeley over here. And let's just take a day in the life. So this is one of my coworkers, and basically, this coworker is on a Sunday, is basically in a park and basically on the playground and checks the weather. Hang on, I'm getting a little bit of feedback here. Okay, so they're in a playground, they're checking the weather. Sorry, somebody came in the room. Playground, checking the weather. Just a little bit later that day on a Sunday, they actually are at a petting farm where they're uploading some photos and sharing at a petting zoo. A little bit later on that Sunday, we see them back at their house, basically tweeting through a popular communications app. And then a little bit later, we actually see them at a retail venue. And then, of course, the next day on a Monday, we see them over in San Francisco, at a work location for most of the day as they're using their app. So we can start to see a trail here of where this user's been and actually get an idea of what they are. And as you can imagine, over time, as you look at 20 or 30 of these data points a day, over several days, over millions and millions of the 850 million devices, you can start to get an idea that this is a mom with children and basically start building and targeting an audience. One thing, in order to do this, you really do have to have accuracy. And there's a lot of different ways of going about this, and a lot of different vendors in the space have done different ways, and they all have their benefits, they all have their drawbacks. In this case, when you're doing mobile and you're doing audience and you're doing targeting and you're doing measurement, accuracy really does matter. So what you're looking at here is actually a mall in Stanford, California, so down the street in Palo Alto, right next to Stanford campus. And this red square basically is an approach that has been pretty prevalent in the marketplace. This is a 100-meter tile, and as you can see, it's not really accurate enough to know where people are in a location. When you're starting to build audiences and target those folks for franchise approaches and national approaches, at the local level or even at the regional level, you really need to have that accuracy down to within 4 to 37 feet. Which is about 4 to 5 decimals in the GPS spec, or about a 10-meter grid versus this 100-meter grid. So again, this red line is about 2 football fields, which is really not precise enough to do audience building as well as audience targeting or audience measurement. So I do want to call that out. It's a very strong consideration when you get into mobiles. You really have to look at how verified and how accurate that location signal is. So how does this work? So first and foremost, you have to have a lot of ad requests and access to big data to make it work. So JiWire, we're tied into most of, if not all of the ad exchanges. We're actually tied into 1,000+ publishing apps and partners, and we basically see almost every ad request that goes across the ecosystem. So with every ad request, we see the device ID, we see some information about that ad request, and we actually see the latitude and longitude. And if we don't see that latitude and longitude, or we see a latitude and longitude that has been faked, i.e. it's the middle of the country or the middle of a city, or it's the same latitude and longitude over and over, and sometimes this happens when people recompile apps and there's some errors in the way information is shared, we actually reject it and don't use it. But as you can imagine, we see almost 100 million ad requests daily. It's about 2 terabytes of data, which is about 4 or 5 billion requests monthly. We actually can use that, and this is the information that we collect, and we actually overlay that on millions of businesses and household and points of interest locations. So we have somewhere upwards of 18 million points of interest in the United States mapped, and over time, as we start seeing where devices are overlaying on those different locations, whether it's at a work location from 8 to 5, a home location from 6 to 6 over the evening, or different retail locations, we really start to build a profile of where those devices are going, and we're actually able to link that information anonymously to build and create and target an audience, and we're actually able to link that to additional data points, again, first-party data around demographics and behavior, as well as some spend data to actually build a really robust audience, target that audience, and actually measure that audience in the mobile space. So again, really need to have big data scale, really need to have a lot of precision and filtering on the location signal, need to have a lot of information about different places, and then third-party data points to triangulate and really build that audience. So I've talked a little bit about mobile and how location is a real-world cookie. We've talked a little bit about how we look at over 850, close to 1 billion devices, and where those devices are going anonymously. and actually using that to build audience. Here's an example of some of the audience profiles that you can build in looking at the location signal, and I'll use an example from a financial context. You know, if there's financial services institutions that and local franchises that actually want to sell banking services or insurance services, these are the audiences that we are helping these particular clients reach that make sense. So again, recent home buyers or movers, so again, people that are changing in location patterns, these are folks that are probably going to want to look at new insurance policies or want to look at banking services in the area. You know, likewise, new parents, again, you might have different financing needs, et cetera, so this is really important audience, you know, in mobile for financial institutions to reach that we're helping reach. Recent job changers, so again, as your benefits change, your insurance structures might change, you might want to look at new insurance or other banking capabilities, you know, to help you in your new job, either with an, you know, with an increase in responsibility, et cetera. And of course, when people are on vacation, so travel insurance if you're going internationally, as well as just banking services, et cetera, when you're going to Disneyland or Legoland or any other parts, ski vacation or beach, et cetera. So again, using location as a real-world cookie, overlaying that over hundreds of millions and billions of ad requests, starting to build audiences by basically linking that anonymously back to locations or where these devices are spending, and looking at additional first and third-party data to really triangulate in and build that audience. And then being able to build an audience such as this for a financial use case. So we've talked a little bit about creating audience. We've talked about targeting that audience. Let's talk about reaching them in an engaging manner. And I'm going to take you through two examples here. One will be a national type buy, which we're going to talk here, Quaker, and another will be a more franchise and local buy. So we were asked by Quaker to basically do a product awareness launch with them for a Quaker Perfect Portions product. And we were targeting a mom audience. So we started with the standard just demographics and some location information, you know, identifying moms for Quaker. We did a rich media unit here where we were showing them where they could buy the product, again, location enabled. We also held nutritional information as well as some product-based information, reviews about the product, which is very important to moms. We also had a social component so that moms could share this with their networks and social circles. We found Amazon actually is pretty popular as well as some of the other channels. And then just some surveys to provide product feedback and what's working and what's not, you know, for Quaker with this product for the moms. And what we found in actually running, you know, targeting this mom audience that we had built and running this rich media creative unit for Quaker was we started out with the baseline moms, but as we started looking at who was engaging with the ad, we started to see that moms that were going to health clubs, moms that were spending a lot of times outdoor in public parks, and moms that were spending a lot of time at healthy dining places were really engaging with this ad. And so we really packaged this up as kind of a gym moms audience for Quaker, and in the next iteration of optimization, we started running different messaging there to these gym moms based on just a healthy lifestyle. Similarly, we started to see patterns emerge around moms in urban environments versus suburban environments, and realizing that actually the suburban moms that were outside of the major cities and the suburbs were actually really engaging with this ad and really interested in the messaging and content of this new product launch for Quaker. So we actually started to segment along the suburban moms and hitting them with a different message than the gym moms. And likewise, we also started to see carpool moms, so moms that were in transit or picking people up on the way to school or from school. And so again, we started with, you know, further into 3 different audiences and started really hitting them with a different message using this real-time location information and that we had in the mobile footprint. And as a result, we basically saw a 23% increase in the performance versus just the base profile of moms that we started out with Quaker. So again, a lot of power in really using rich media to engage, and then using this mobile audience and location-based audience to optimize and further refine the campaign to hit the national objectives. Now, we've talked about a national campaign. Well, what are some of the things that, excuse me, one more slide here. So again, just briefly want to touch on, you know, we can see where someone is, we can see where they're going in an anonymous manner. One of the other things we're actually doing is also overlaying spend data, and I won't spend too much time here. This will be something for a future webinar, but we do have some partnerships with companies like Datalogics, where now we can take the location mobile audiences and augment them with what type of products they're purchasing. And now we're not just targeting the moms based on traditional demographics. We're not just targeting moms based on where they're going, but we're also targeting the moms on, you know, what they're buying at the store. So very, very valuable audience signals in mobile and things that we can do very powerfully in mobile to really reach that audience and drive national objectives. Now that's a little bit on the national side. Let's talk about more on the hyper-local franchise side, because I know with LSA, we have definitely some national players, but we also have national players that have local representation, and we're actually helping some of our clients actually really reach consumers and desired audiences in the local market, for the local agents and local franchises. So this is an example. I had to genericize a financial services approach that we're taking. But basically running, mobile creative in, the area that Edward Crane is actually advertising. And then as people engage, we've actually a mobile-hosted rich media experience here that really allows local prospects for Edward Crane to sell insurance to and connect with. So again, we can use this location platform, we can use location signals, we can use our mobile targeting to actually really drive engagement and behavior in the local market. So as you can see here, and again, as we find, if you think about with realtors and financial services and even restaurants, et cetera, seeing pictures of the place, knowing office hours, basically knowing, click to call and connect, knowing where they are, seeing where you are in proximity, and then being able to connect and engage with them through various channels such as an email, an SMS, as a form fill, or even scheduling an appointment with them, directly here from the phone, and seeing the types of specials and sharing information if you find something that's helpful, as we saw that moms like to share, not necessarily maybe an insurance agent, but a restaurant or some of the other things in the local franchise market. So again, very powerful ways using mobile with a location signal to reach and hit national objectives, and then with the creative experiences and audience and geofencing as well, being able to actually reach, in the hyper-local market, reach agents, as well as other local franchise opportunities to drive leads and visits with mobile experiences. So we've talked, again, we've talked about creating the audiences and how location makes that happen. We've talked about targeting and engaging those audiences using a location signal as well as some spin signals. We've talked about using rich media and engagements at the national and franchise level. Let's talk a little bit about the research that we're doing and the research that's possible to actually help in the mobile channels, specifically with national buys as well as franchise. So we just launched a new research report today on QSR, which stands for Quick Serve Restaurants. So Burger King, McDonald's, Chili's, Applebee's, Waffle House if you're down there in the South where I'm from. And basically, we do a lot of this research for the industry to really help people understand the mobile channel and how their particular consumers by category are engaging with mobile and what works and what doesn't. But we also do this type of research for the clients we're working with to really help them understand and set up a media plan or set up how am I going to reach a national audience or my local franchise audience. And I'll just share a few tidbits from this research report, and I'll go through this really quickly before we go into the measurement component. But you can actually download and sign up to receive our reports by going to JiWire.com, Insights Research, or go into your favorite search engine and just type JiWire and Insights, and you can see the latest PDFs and get on the mailing list to receive this. So what we found in doing our QSR research, looking at the campaigns in the industry, is that actually mobile apps are driving a lot of discovery for the QSR channel, for people finding out about restaurants and actually going and visiting the restaurants. As you can imagine, there's some offline other ways such as print, as well as magazines and probably broadcast and television, and then online and then some other channels as well. But actually mobile apps and the mobile channel really influencing the QSR channel for people going into those local franchises. In regards to advertising impact on QSR, it's actually very, very likely that when people see an ad from a QSR, they are going into that. And we've actually seen with a lot of the campaigns we're running that the immediacy of that within a few days is actually working very well. And one of the things we found in working with a lot of our clients and doing this research of driving people into local franchise QSR stores, especially around holiday times and even during non-holiday times, is that menu information and sales or coupons are probably the most important thing to have in that messaging when you're running a mobile campaign and trying to get people to go into a QSR location. So again, very powerful research. We do this for a lot of our clients. We do it by category. So whether you're in retail, whether you're in financial services, whether you're in CPG, whether you're in house homeowner services, etc. This is the type of things we're looking at to let the industry as a whole know why mobile matters, and actually letting our clients and individuals working with the local franchises know what's working and what's not as you engage in the mobile channel. Just real briefly here, so QSR and casual dining creative execution is what we found really matters for the quick serve restaurants when you're running mobile advertising and engaging those prospects and consumers and getting them in your store. One, doing it in a rich media fashion, again with coupons and menu items, menu being the most important, letting them know about the location and being very location aware of where the consumer is, and then not too far on the back end of that, again, some deals and offers and some other some videos as well. As we move from geofencing into audience targeting in mobile, which it's here today, and as we're walking through, mobile audiences are extremely important, and they actually give you a lot more reach outside of the geofences you might be talking to. We still will give proximity information. So what you're looking at here is of the QSR restaurants, what's the proximity distribution curve look like? So what we can see here is that a lot of people are engaging within 1 to 2 miles of the QSRs, which makes sense because if people are looking for food, they're probably out and about and saying, hey, what's going on, what specials, etc. And then also when they're about 10 to 25 miles away, so usually when they're at home. And again, it's not shown here, but some of the research we're doing as well around audiences where you see more family audiences resonating farther away, more younger college student or more urban area audiences, again, being closer to the QSR. So again, a lot of very insightful information that can be gleaned from looking at location, that can be gleaned from looking at the mobile experience, and that can be gleaned from looking at offline behavior to really drive media strategy and optimization and making sure that your mobile experience is really engaging your customer and getting them to come in the door or drive those leads for your local franchise. So let's move a little bit from the research. Again, we talked about audiences and creating those audiences. We talked about engaging them with rich media units and at the national and local level, and we talked a little bit about some of the research that's possible to drive media planning and optimization to really drive a campaign that hits objectives and drives desired outcomes. Let's talk a little bit about measurement, and I'm going to talk not necessarily about click measurement or call measurement, but actually offline measurement. So if someone saw my ad, did they go into the store? And we've been running this location conversion index, which is JiWire's basically offline location measurement here. And basically, we're actually helping a lot of brands and agencies and hopefully here the LSA community and industry understand when I run a mobile campaign and I run a media buy, is this actually driving people into my locations? Whether it's my franchise locations or my national locations, etc. And the important thing here is there's a lot of noise out in the marketplace about I run a media campaign and then I count the number of people that go into the store. That's an interesting methodology, but as a marketer, I want to know of people that I reached. I want to know who's actually going into my store above and beyond. So I don't really care about the unaided visits. So I go into Starbucks 2 or 3 times a week, and actually that's the general norm for most people. People will go into a coffee shop about 2 or 3 times a week. People go into a grocery store about 1.5 times a week. People go into a retail clothing store about one every other week. People go into a quick serve restaurant somewhere between 1 to 2 times a week, depending on what type of audience you are and where you live. So again, I don't want to take credit for people going in to the store naturally. I only want to take credit for if they go into the store more as a result of seeing my ad. So this is what LCI is. It's basically saying, based on your mobile spend, here's the incremental increase in visits that you drove to your store. And it's very powerful stuff, and we're seeing a lot of traction. It's one of the ways that we're helping the industry not only provide digital KPIs, but offline KPIs that matter, and saying what was the efficacy of my mobile spend. So how do we do this? How do we tell mobile advertisers that we're actually driving people into the store more than they would normally go based on their natural visit rate? Well, first and foremost, again, you've got to have a lot of scale. So we're using our 850 million devices and our integrations across the ecosystem into all the publishers and all the RTB exchanges to see these ad calls. The other thing we're doing is we're actually looking back. Again, we have several years of data of which devices are going to which of those 18 million locations. And we're actually able to see the natural visit rate in aggregate and actually by device. So we can actually filter out the natural visit rate so that we're not taking credit for those unaided visits. We're able to calculate the increase in sales. So again, very, very important to be able to look back and understand visit rate behavior in an anonymous manner for a device over a location, and being able, or a collection of locations across the country, and being able to actually take that out when you're doing your lift measurement. The other thing we do that's very powerful is actually an identical control group. And we actually do this post facto. So what this means is when we show an ad to somebody, to a target audience, we actually look not only at the audience dimensions we use to build the audience, but we also look at other dimensions such as demographic and behaviors. And then we find somebody who's not seen that ad and actually almost match them as an identical twin. Because when you do a lift and a measurement calculation, you want to do it not against the general population, against everybody. You want to do it against the people that you're trying to reach, and you want to make sure those people that are engaging actually you do your control group that look exactly like them. So again, big data scale here, looking at the natural visit rate to account for it and take it out, find identical controls, and then we actually measure after the ad expose over the period of the campaign who went into the store and actually calculate the lift in this LCI. So I'll walk you through a case study here. We had a Fortune 500 fashion retailer. They actually have about 400 to 500 franchise retail locations across the country. They were launching a new assortment and product catalog, and they wanted to reach basically women, casual female shoppers that go in their stores as well as competitive stores. And they wanted to incent these ladies not only to learn about the catalog, but actually to go into the store for some promotions and really engage with the catalog and the new assortment. So we built this audience for this Fortune fashion retailer. We actually did not do geofencing for them. We just targeted the audience because we wanted to reach women that were, again, going not only to their stores but competitor stores, and geofencing just wouldn't make sense to do that, and it really doesn't make sense once audience targeting is available in mobile, which it is today at scale. And I'll show you what this looks like. I'll walk you through an example just so you can see this in action. So this is one of their stores somewhere in the United States. And again, this is just a few hours worth of engagement. But these blue dots, which you see here, so store here, these blue dots basically represent where devices engaged with the ad. So these are some of the target audience of women, casual shoppers that we were targeting. These phones actually represent basically audiences that were going into this brand store anyway. These other blue dots, of course, represent people that were going into the competitor stores. And these are representing basically phones that were devices and consumers that were going into their store naturally on a probably every other week basis. So this is kind of that natural visit rate. And then the green phones actually represent people that went into the store more than their normal visit rate of about every other week into this brand store. So again, very powerful in that we were able to target this audience in mobile, and build and target this audience in mobile, understand their natural visit rate into this brand stores and account for that because we're looking back several years at their patterns, and then actually understand the incremental increase in visits to their stores as a result of the exposure to the ad. So in a nutshell, at a high level, just the results of this campaign were that we were basically driving people 32% of the time more into the store than their target audience. So the way we'd read this is the general population is everybody with a mobile phone in the country. That's everybody, whether it's male, female, etc. This middle bar is basically the casual female shopper that we wanted to reach. And what this shows you is that they're already going into this brand stores more than the general population, which makes sense because they're being exposed to print ads, they're being exposed to television ads, they're being exposed to other online ads, as well as perhaps even some other mobile campaigns that might have been running in parallel to the ones that JiWire was running. And then this third bar basically represents people, the female shoppers that were exposed to the ad and actually went into the store. And what this tells you is the ad exposure of the campaign we ran for this brand basically drove women 57% of the time more into the store than they would normally go, and more than the general population, and 32% of the time more than the target audience that did not see the ad, the identical match control. So very, very heavy stuff for this client, who was very excited because now they could tie their mobile spend dollars to actual offline behavior. And we were actually able to, there's some additional stuff I can't show you here, but we were actually able to show them how this further performed by different audience dimensions, as well as by the different creatives we ran. So very, very powerful. So now we're moving from measuring clicks and more digital KPIs into measuring offline behavior and tying that back to mobile audiences and seeing how it performs to drive media strategy. And we'll have some time in QA to answer. I know this is some pretty heavy stuff, and Andrew and I will be available as well after the webinar. If you have additional questions, we can dive deeper. Just a few more points. We actually ran another, campaign for a similar Fortune 500 retailer. Before we even inked the deal to run this for them, we actually did a lot of research. And they wanted to run a Mother's Day campaign. They wanted to geofence, certain locations. And we said, hey, let us build an audience for you. By the way, you want to reach moms. You want to reach, professional working moms. Here's the places where they spend their time. Again, some of the places you wanted to geofence are actually not the places where they're really spending their time. So you would have missed out on this audience, by using the geofencing and making it really tight. The other thing is that we found that a lot of the moms had male counterparts with them 32% of the time. We're like, look, this is a great opportunity to not only target the female mom, but also, the dad that's there and supporting, as another family head of household. We said we should extend this and, target moms as well as a male audience and hit them with different messaging. And then we let them know some of the average, visit rates that they were seeing across the different competitor stores as well as their stores. So again, very powerful media planning stuff that we used with this client before we even started running the advertising campaign. It really helped us define an audience, build that audience, target the messaging and creative for that audience before we even launched it. So a lot of research, and we really provide, as we get into location and using mobile, these are the types of information you can use to really plan and drive an effective media campaign. Just some other things that we learned on this with, with this particular Fortune 500 retail client. They were trying to reach moms for Mother's Day campaign. These are the tech categories where these professional moms are spending most of their time, and if you look at it, this is the best time to reach them. So normally, during the day when they're working, which is a little bit counterintuitive, but this actually is the best time because people are really engaging with their devices at work, and then right after work. And of course, early morning and late night, not as effective, at least for this particular audience we were looking at. And these curves look different based on the different audiences you look at. So again, a lot of value in really taking an audience-based approach and building an audience in mobile and using that to drive executions and media planning. So I'll just share a few more graphs here, and then we'll wrap up here in the next few minutes. We can get the Q&A around mobile. But basically, this is a CPG campaign we ran. So this is looking at some of the CPG engagements. We had a product launch for one of our CPG companies, and we were doing some stuff in out of home as well. And this is where the ad engagements were happening within part of the day. This is actually the home locations of people that engaged. This is where their homes were. And again, we did this in an aggregate, anonymous manner. And again, everything's PII compliant. And this brand we were working with really wanted to understand where were the grocery stores where these audiences were shopping, where were they going, so that it could help with their billboard and digital out-of-home strategy, as well as some of the other things location-based they were doing, in parallel to what we were doing with them from the JiWire perspective. So again, we're able to identify the top grocery chains for them to do some outreach and some of the larger DMAs, by DMA to actually really drive, some cross-promotional strategy stuff. So again, very, very powerful when you start using location, you start using mobile, and then you actually start using a lot of this research and analytics to really drive your marketing strategy, in other areas and promotion strategy. And I'll just wrap up here with the insights report and the QSR that we published today. This is what the LCI metrics look like. So benchmarks of drive-to locations for LCI. On average, we see somewhere about a 37% lift of people going in of ad exposed versus controlled audience. and then we usually see a 54% lift versus just the general population. On Drive 2 for QSR specifically, a little bit below that benchmark for Drive 2, but you'd probably expect that because people are naturally going to QSR as well. But again, this is the type of things we're looking at overall and then the category basis for a lot of our clients. And we're going to be publishing more of this research around retail and other verticals. But if you go to jiwire.com/insights or do a search for JiWire space insights, all of our reports are out there for mobile and some of the learnings. And again, get on the email list so you can stay abreast of some of the trends for your particular clients and or the consumers you're trying to reach and understand their behaviors. So that's pretty much it. I do want to get to Q&A and make sure we answer everybody's questions. And just in a nutshell, again, JiWire, we've been building mobile audiences for a while. We've got extensive reach. We're helping a lot of our clients do offline measurement as well as digital measurement. We have performance products in addition to the national display products. And again, we do rich media. Everything's privacy compliant. We can help build, target, and basically offer audience intelligence across different consumers and cuts of consumers across the country. And again, we can measure offline, visits into stores and show increase in visits and not just the unaided visits going in. So without further ado, I guess, Joe, hopefully we've had some questions come in, and myself and Andrew, I'm happy to answer those. And thanks for your time, LSA community and Joe and team.
If this is cookie-based, how do we moderate exhausting impressions?
Exactly. So in mobile, in online there's cookies, but in mobile there's actually a device ID. So we actually, with every request, we see something called the IDFA, which is the Android ID. And in fact, I'm going to go up a few slides here and just show you what one of those looks like. Hopefully everybody can see this. But basically, in mobile, there's something called the device ID. So Apple has something called the IDFA, and this is what one looks like. I won't tell you whose phone that is. It's mine, actually. And an Android ID, which is basically this. So it looks just like an online cookie. It's just a random string of text. But in mobile, this is actually what we use to identify. And to your question around frequency capping, that's what allows us to frequency cap and pace against impressions based on the client. Great question. So again, in online, there's a cookie. In mobile, there's a device ID, and those device ID flavors are IDFA for Apple, which stands for identifier for Apple, and Android ID, which is now becoming advertiser ID for the Android platform. And those are considered non-PII identifiers, which is why we use them.
How do you manage privacy with this level of consumer visibility?
Yeah, definitely. So there's two steps in here. First and foremost, with a partnership with Trustee. So Trustee is a third-party, basically verification and privacy service. We basically allow any consumer at any time to opt out of receiving these ads. So we're 100% OBA compliant. So every ad we serve has the ad choices icon on it, and basically allows them to opt out. The other thing is, if people do not enable location services or do not share their location, we do not include them in an audience, or we do not measure them. So it's almost a double opt-in, if you will, because people have to enable the location services for it to happen. So there's 2 points and ways for consumers to opt out, and one of those is actually an opt-in in regards to the location signal. Another great question. And again, privacy, extremely important in mobile. So as you're working either with JiWire or you're working with other vendors, always make sure that they've got the privacy component covered. They're working with somebody like a Trustee that allows an OBA compliant opt-out, and that they're basically being polite and not collecting information that the consumer has said, please do not collect. And again, this is all anonymous. We don't tie it back to a name, so it's all non-PII compliant.
Do people have to enable location service on their phone in order to be tracked? If yes, do we know about how many people disable location services?
So the answer is yes. In order for the location, to build location services do have to be enabled. Some people enable it for some apps and not other, and we still will see the location signal for the ones that do want the location services. I'm sorry, Joe, can you repeat the second part of that question?
If yes, do we know about how many people disable location services?
Yeah, so it depends. It depends by operating system, but usually we see probably less than 10%. So again, we have extensive scale. There's 4. So just to let you know, every unique in the United States has on average 4 mobile devices. They switch between those 21 times daily. And for those that have it turned off, we just won't include them. We won't target them, but there still is enough scale to reach audiences in mobile just because there's so many devices. And they're never more than 3 feet away from individuals, so it's very prevalent.
How long does it take to build these audiences? How long does it take to measure the offline impact of media spend?
Yeah, sure, definitely. So to build the audiences, it depends. It's a function of frequency. So if you think about it, most people in the United States go into the Dunkin' Donuts or the Starbucks or the Peet's Coffee, or insert your favorite coffee shop 2 or 3 times a week. So there's a high frequency component there, and you can build that audience within a few weeks. If you get into lower frequency visits, such as like an auto dealership, et cetera, which is still possible, it takes a little bit longer. The good news is we've been doing this for a long time, so we've actually already pre-built a lot of these audiences, and they're already ready to go out the gate today. If somebody comes to us and says, I'd like to build a custom audience, it usually takes us somewhere between 2 to 4 weeks to get it basically built and live and targeting, and it ramps from there. In regards to offline measurement, it's also a function of the frequency of visits going in the store. So we usually see when we run a campaign, we can actually start really doing the LCI measurement and the offline store visit measurement within 2 to 3 weeks after the campaign's run for about another 2 or 3 weeks. So usually after about 4 weeks from campaign launch, we can start measuring the offline measurement. And that's just, it's a function of giving it enough time for people to see the ad and go into the store. And we've determined over time by different categories that sweet spot's right about 2 weeks.
If your block cookie mechanism is on, can the cookie really be blocked and tracking inhibited?
So when you say block cookie, that's when you're talking online and you're basically disabling cookies in your browser. That cookie won't be shared in online. In mobile, again, the cookie concept really doesn't exist because in mobile web, the cookie expires about every 7 days. And in an app, it doesn't even last quite that long. Again, we don't really use a cookie in the traditional sense of online. We actually use IDFA for Apple devices, which is the Apple IDFA device identifier, and we use Android ID. Now, there is an option to turn those off and to not share them for advertising, and if that's the case, it's just as if someone has said, I don't want to share my location. We don't see them. We don't capture information to build audiences, and we don't include them in our audience segments or in our measurement. So again, mobile privacy, very important, and again, there's a lot of options for mobile consumers to opt out, through OBA, NAI, opt out through like a trustee, as well as just not share their location or device ID, and those are all settings that are possible and easy to do on the phone. And again, if they disable that or don't share, we don't even collect the information.
Can you only locate a device at the time you are serving up an ad?
So that's a very good question. We don't have to serve an ad to locate the device, but we do have to see an ad request. That's, we just, again, we have to see the ad request, or we have, and whether we serve an ad or not, we do have to see the ad request. Now, keep in mind, we see close to 100 million of those ad requests a day, which is about 4 to 5 billion ad requests a month. So it is enough to build an audience and enough to measure the audience effectively. And again, as you get into persistent location, we're really staying away from that. One, because it's just some of the battery stuff, but two, we're more interested in engaging with people based on when they're in an app or mobile web and basically engaging with an ad, or at least requiring an ad experience.
Do you work outside the U.S.?
Right now, we're U.S. only. There are some dialogues going on with some other markets, but for now, JiWire is U.S. only.
How do you match people through different devices?
let me see if I understand. So how do you match, oh, cross-device, got it. So we actually, I didn't talk too much about it here, but we actually do cross-device targeting. So for the industry, cross-device basically means I show an ad to a user on a mobile phone, I show the ad to the user on the tablet, and I also show them an ad when they're on their desktop or laptop. And we see this use case very prevalent in financial services and some other areas where you want to drive branding, you want to drive some type of DR, but you actually want to drive a form sign up when they're in their laptop because, as you can imagine, we're used to doing our banking on our laptops. We're used to doing our banking, at our desktops at home. It's okay, to put our information into there. When it comes to a mobile device, it's a little harder to do on a smartphone, on a tablet. We can do it, but it's still untethered, so it doesn't feel safe. So we're seeing a lot of cross-device. We actually do offer cross-device targeting. And there's a lot of the way you actually do that is you can look at a lot of different dimensions, but we know which devices belong to which household. We also know which desktops and laptops are connecting from which household, looking at basically which carrier they're connecting from, such as an AT&T or Verizon or Sprint, or which ISP they're connecting from, such as a Comcast or Time Warner, which is, I guess, is going to become one and the same here in the coming months, or Verizon Fios. And we're able to actually look at those devices connecting at home and connecting at work and actually able to bridge and match them that way. And again, you've got to have a lot of scale there. You've got to see things and be able to reject some of the noise. But we do offer cross-device, and it is done through Myriad, again, with connections. And we also look at how frequently they're connecting, what type of content they're looking at, et cetera, et cetera.
What percentage of traffic goes from publishers, networks, and exchanges?
Publishers, it depends. We don't look at it overall. We look at it by audience from a JiWire perspective, and I'm sure some of the other research organizations, such as the LSA or eMarketer, can provide some of that. From an audience perspective, we go where we see the best audience impression. In some cases, that'll be direct to publisher. In other cases, we'll actually see it on the exchanges. I think you're seeing a shift from direct traffic into exchanges, and it's quite a buzzword right now, but there's still a lot of noise in the exchanges because a lot of people are putting all their spots out there because they want to monetize it, but it's not necessarily the best spot or the best audience. So again, we look at it on an audience-by-audience basis, on a client-by-client basis, and when we see an audience, when we see a device ID come across, we make sure it's the right audience regardless if it's coming from a direct publisher or from the exchange.
How do you verify audiences and location in mobile with third parties?
Yes, that's a great question. So we've been getting a lot of this, and those on the phone and that have been in this industry for a while can understand. There's the verification agencies, so the ComScores of the world, the Nielsen's of the world, Competes, et cetera. They have a lot of good verification products and online. For those of you that are familiar with it, ComScore VCE is for did you reach the audience you said you did? Nielsen OCR and Catalina, did you reach the audience you said you did? Their mobile products are still coming up to speed, so most of the verification done right now is going to be on laptop, desktop, or tablet. The in-app smartphone verification is not quite fully baked, but it should be coming later this year. So we are working with the ComScores and Nielsen's of the world, to help them figure out and crack, the smartphone verification for mobile and location, and that's coming soon. But right now, their product teams are still figuring out the best way to do that.
How do you guarantee ad viewability in mobile?
That's another great question. So again, we're working with several vendors out there, Double Verifies of the world, Stickies of the world, for those of you that know them on the national side. Again, just like with audience verification with ComScore and Nielsen, it's possible to do it online, and that's where most of the solutions have been. They're migrating their solutions into mobile. It'll work on tablet. We're still working through how to make that happen in smartphone because, as people know, if you're running an iPhone with iOS 7 and you're running some of the newer Android operating systems, apps can run in the background. So you want to make sure that you're viewing that ad, and we're working with some of those vendors right now to crack that nut, and we hopefully should have a solution a little bit later this year.
Thanks, guys, for conducting today's webinar. We really appreciate all the info. I'd also like to thank everyone for attending today. If you have any additional questions, please feel free to contact us at LSA, and we can connect you with today's presenters. Also, I want to remind everyone about a few things. First, the early bird rate expires February 28th for this year's LSA conference featuring Apple co-founder Steve Wozniak. In addition, the deadline for submitting to our Add to Action Awards is also February 28th. So don't forget to register and submit today. Thanks again, everyone, and have a great day.